I'd have to say my favorite chapters are 4 and 13. What's up, guys? I'm your teen librarian, Gina, and this month you told me to read American Panda by Gloria Chao. For those of you who haven't read the book, or if it's been a while and you can't quite remember what happened in chapters 4 and 13, the short answer is nothing. Those chapters don't exist because, as Chao explains, the word for 4 in Mandarin sounds like the Mandarin word for death. The number is considered unlucky and is avoided when numbering things. Similarly, the number 13 is considered unlucky in Western culture and is similarly avoided. While the inclusion of these superstitions in numbering the chapters is objectively kind of funny, it also highlights the main theme of the book. A young woman trapped between two cultures, feeling like she belongs to neither, struggling to become herself. I'm gonna be honest, I've been pretty meh about this book since it was published. The cover and the summary makes this seem like some Romeo and Juliet style rom-com. And I hate rom-coms. I prefer spending my time reading things I enjoy, not books that make me continuously want to roll my eyes or throw them across the room. But this is not one of those books. In fact, the romantic relationship is the least aggressive point of conflict. The problem is the struggle of the main character, Mei, who is second-generation Taiwanese American, between the expectations of her very traditional parents and her own desire to be happy. This clash of cultures, the Taiwanese respect for and adherence to family over the individual's desires, and the American pursuit of individual happiness, is exemplified in 3 areas of conflict. The first area is Mei's future. The book opens with Mei at MIT, and she's on track to eventually go to med school per her parents' plan. The problem is she's a germaphobe who falls asleep in biology class and actively hates the idea of being a doctor. Mei forces herself to job shadow medical professionals several times, and the only thing she discovers is that she can't be a doctor without completely losing who she is and being miserable for the rest of her life. She loves dancing, though, and has an impossible dream of one day opening her own dance studio. Her first act of rebellion is teaching dance classes at a local studio, when, according to her internal parents, she should be studying. The second area of conflict, and what is arguably the most outward-facing, is Mei's relationship with her brother. Jing was disowned several years prior to the book for falling in love with a woman with difficulties becoming pregnant. Mei and family run into Jing and his now fiancée Esther about a third of the way through the book. The family is furious, and their grandmother basically says that Esther should do the right thing and give Jing to her more fertile sister. But since she won't, she'll just have to pray for her death. Mei's takeaway is that Esther is not the she-devil the family painted her as, and that the insults her family threw at this woman were not something she can agree with. It's still not enough for her to break away, but it does open a door. After trying unsuccessfully to talk about her problems with friends, she starts reaching out to her brother. He understands what it means to disappoint their parents. He understands what the consequences of rebellion are, and the kind of pressure and guilt she's actually feeling about these disobedient thoughts and actions. Rebuilding this relationship is what triggers the break with her parents. A friend of theirs comes up to them while they're out to eat and mentions seeing Mei and Jing together. Rather than lie about it, May tells her parents that she can't be part of a tradition she does not agree with, and then takes it a step further and informs them that she can't be a doctor and is no longer going to try to be something she's not. At which point her father disowns her in the middle of the restaurant. The final area of conflict is almost entirely internal to May, which I loved. Her budding romance with the inappropriate Darren Takahashi is not the cause of her rebellion. It's not the first step she takes in defying her parents, and it's not the catalyst for the break in her relationship with them. There's a little bit of almost angst before they get together when he calls some of the things her family believes absurd, and May gets defensive, and later when she breaks up with him because he shouldn't have to deal with her family. But overall, the relationship between Darren and May is very supportive and stable, and it's never a true point of conflict between May and her parents. Mainly because it never actually comes up until things are long settled. There are a lot of characters in this book, so I'm going to limit myself to those that I felt particularly strongly about. Otherwise, this video would end up like 30 minutes long. Let's start with May. I like her a lot. I think she's very courageous, even if she might not see it, and she's strong. She's used to being on her own, partially from her upbringing and partially because she's shy. But she never walls herself off. She has a pretty decent support network outside of her family, and she recognizes that. It's what allows her to begin standing on her own rather than groveling back to her parents. Once she lets go of her fear, after her parents have done their worst and there's nothing left for her to lose, she realizes her strength and starts helping others grow. She's also really compassionate. She doesn't want to lose her parents, and she's willing to work to bridge the gap, as long as they're not expecting everything to go back to the way it was. And that's its own kind of strength. Through this experience, May's eyes are opened to her own closed-mindedness. Instead of being jealous of friends whose parents gave them more freedoms, she accepts that there's no one right way to parent, and not just one type of respect. Rather than judging people based on her own assumptions about them, she learns to talk to them and actually listen to what they're trying to say, not just what she's hearing. Now, I mentioned May's support network, and two of the most prominent members are Darren and her roommate Nicolette. I'll get to Darren in a minute. Nick is awesome. I love her. At first, she serves as a vessel to show how May is actually fairly close-minded at the beginning of the story. May believes rumors, jumps to conclusions, and makes assumptions about who Nick is without actually talking to her. Part of that is Nick's own standoffishness when they first meet. After May's disownment, like literally that night as soon as she realizes something is wrong, Nick is there for her. They form the basis of a really solid friendship, which we see grow over the rest of the book. Nick never tries to pretend that she can understand what May is going through, and she doesn't offer advice based on circumstances that she's completely unfamiliar with. Instead, she provides a willing ear for May to vent and shares her own problems, neither of them having an expectation that this will magically make everything better. Then Nick offers a distraction in the form of chair surfing in MIT's underground tunnels, something May would never have done on her own. Nick is a true friend. She pushes May out of her comfort zone, but also offers support and someone to lean on. Darren, I also love. I love all of the characters in their own ways, actually. But Darren is so self-aware and genuinely a good person. He supports May, he follows her lead, he gives her space to figure out what she wants, but he's not a pushover. When May breaks up with him for his own good, Darren does not chase her. In fact, we don't get any further interaction with Darren until May decides that their relationship is worth whatever happens, and apologizes. Darren half-jokingly demands a romantic speech before they update their status, and 6 months later, they're still very happily together. The final character that I want to spend some time on is May's mother. Probably my favorite thing about this book is the evolution of their relationship. Her mother is really the center of the struggle between tradition and cultural evolution, which is so prominent in this book. At one point, May speculates that first-generation immigrants may hold on to their traditions so tightly because they are not a part of the natural evolution of those traditions in their home country. There's also this idea of getting stuck because that's the way things have always been. At the end of the book, May's mother apologizes for a few of the things she did while raising her. Things that she hated when her own mother did them to her. But she didn't know any other way to raise her daughter. But that she's trying to learn new ways to parent and to be there for her adult daughter now. I think the best example of the change in May's mother and in their relationship is shown through the voicemail messages she leaves May throughout the book. Until the last 3 chapters, she ends every voicemail by saying something about being May's 母亲. My pronunciation might be horrible. Anyway, it's a form of the word mother in Mandarin. At the time, I was reading this as, oh, she's adorable. She's not quite familiar enough with technology to realize that May would be able to tell from the phone number and her voice that it's her mother calling her. When I was double-checking something for this video, I reread part of chapter 1, which included a description of the word as the formal, distant version of mother that implied authority. Which means throughout most of the book, her mother was demanding respect from her daughter, creating distance between them, and constantly reminding her of her place in the family. And it makes those last few voicemails, once she starts moving away from rigid adherence to tradition and getting to know who May really is as a person, those messages, when she is no longer including that reminder, become an incredibly subtle but significant showcase of how their relationship has changed. I really liked this book, which surprised me, since I'm not a big fan of contemporary realistic fiction, especially when it comes to reading about other cultures, which often include unfamiliar words and pronunciations that pull me out of the story because I have to figure out what I just read and whether or not it was important. This book didn't have a whole lot of that. There were some little things that I was unfamiliar with and apparently glossed over, but I never felt like I missed something. I also feel like I learned some things. A little bit about Taiwanese traditions, but more so about the struggles that second-generation American immigrants can face, particularly if their family comes from a place with a culture that is so different to that in the United States. And that is why it's important to read books like this that are written by people that come from different backgrounds, that take place in areas that are different than what you're familiar with, and that have characters that come from these different backgrounds, to help develop empathy for people outside of your immediate sphere and to help you understand the world. First is When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandhya Menon. It's another second-generation immigrant story the main characters, Dimple and Rishi, are being set up in a traditional arranged marriage by their parents. Rishi is all for it. He's a romantic at heart and fully believes in the power of tradition. Dimple, on the other hand, is fully ready to take a break from her family, especially her mother's obsession with her finding the ideal Indian husband. When Rishi's parents tell him that he'll be going to the same summer program as the woman they've paired him with, he is ready to woo his future bride. And Dimple, well, Dimple's parents decided not to tell her he'd be there. Second is It's Not Like It's a Secret by Misa Sigura. This is the story of Sana Kiyohara, who has to pack up her life and move from Wisconsin to Silicon Valley when her dad gets a new job. Sana has always kept things to herself, how left out she felt when she wasn't invited to parties, the fact that she's pretty sure her dad's having an affair, and that her crushes may have all been on girls. She always figured that the hardest thing would be telling people the truth. But, turns out, what comes after is what gets complicated. That is it for my review of American Panda by Gloria Chao. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to vote for February's Tell Me What to Read between the 1st and the 15th of the month on the La Quinta Library's blog. And join us on Discord for team programs, activities, and events. And like, subscribe, ring the bell to stay up to date with what's going on for you at your library.